Hey everybody, today we're going to be talking about negative exponents. So I imagine that a lot of you understand what exponents are and know how to work with them, but the conceptual leap from normal exponents to negative exponents is a little abstract and it's a little hard to grasp. So I'm going to help you understand what they are today. This should be a pretty short video because it's a pretty simple concept, but one that takes at least a little bit of explaining. So here we go. First thing I want you guys to start thinking about is what's the motivation behind exponents? So exponents is when you multiply something by itself however many times you want it, right? So let's imagine that we're in math land and we're going along and we got a 2 and we want to multiply that 2 by itself 4 times. Imagine you're in class and you're doing this and you keep having to multiply 2 by itself 4 times and you have to write it down and it's a pain and it's written homework, your teacher wants you to hand it in. So you're like, oh well, good thing I know that 2 times itself 4 times is the same thing as raising 2 to the power of 4, right? If you had 5 6s, you had to keep writing that over and over again. That's pretty annoying, right? So we could just write 6 to the power of 5. So exponents, it's really just a way to cut down on time. Because multiplying something by itself is something that, it's a concept that comes up a lot in mathematics. So in general, if you had something raised to the power n, you multiply it by itself n times. Okay, so that's exponents. It makes sense where they're coming from. Now, let's say you're in that same math class and your teacher starts asking you about dividing things a bunch of times instead of multiplying them. So let's say, okay, but what about negative exponents? So up above we wanted to multiply 2 by itself 4 times, but let's say your teacher was like, okay, now we're going to multiply 1/2 by itself 4 times. And you got to write that over and over again and hand it in for homework and it's due in 2 hours. So you're like, okay, so I know that multiplying 1/2 by itself a bunch, I have 4 2's on the bottom, I could write 1/2 to the 4. But that's still that's a lot of writing. I mean, I gotta write the 1 over the whole time. So multiplication is kind of the opposite of division. So maybe instead of writing positive 4, I could write negative 4. And if we had to keep multiplying 6 by itself, 1/6 by itself 3 times. Well, that's 1/6 to the 3 because we're multiplying 3 6's on the bottom, but the 1 over is annoying, so let's write 1/6 to the negative 3. So basically all negative exponents is when you have something on one side of the fraction, let's say on the bottom, if you had 1/a to the n, that's just equal to 1/a to the negative, just equal to a to the negative n. Basically, it has the same motivation as above here. So instead of having to keep writing 1/2 to 2, whatever, we're just saying, okay, whenever we have an exponent on the bottom of a fraction, we'll just bring it up to the top of the fraction and give it a negative sign. So just to drive the point home, every time you have a negative exponent, then just flip it to the other side of the fraction. Get this text box centered so everything stays structurally sound of the fraction. Well, I guess, here we go. So in general, let's go back to our examples up here. 2 to the negative 2. If it's on the top of the fraction, you bring it down to the bottom of the fraction, right? To the power of 2. Because what we want is, instead of multiplying 2 by itself twice, we want to divide 2 by itself twice. I don't want to write all this out every time, so I'm just writing 2 to the negative 2. Same for this, 1 over 3 to the negative 5. Okay, I know that that's 3 to the 5, because you just take what's on the bottom and you flip it up to the top, and that's equal to 3 by itself. 3 multiplied by itself 5 times. And in general, we always stick with the most simplest form, right? It's about writing as little as possible. So whenever you see a negative exponent on the bottom of a fraction, flip it up, and if you see a negative exponent that's not being divided by anything, you could flip that to the bottom, but you would leave it as a negative exponent. So just the final really abstract example, x to the negative n, that's equal to 1 over x to the n. And that's equal to 1 over x times itself n times. So this, I might have gotten a little bit abstract towards the end of the video here. What I want you to take away from this video is that if you have a negative exponent, just flip it to the other side of the fraction and take away the negative sign, because it's just kind of the inverse of normal exponents, right? And all exponents are is saving time writing. So I don't want to repeat myself anymore. I've kind of out-explained it at this point. Negative exponents are pretty simple. Just negative signs are easy to miss, so make sure and always look for a negative in your exponents and keep track of them. And that's really it, guys. This concept is going to pop up a heck of a lot, so make sure you understand it. I hope this video helped, and have a good day, guys.